Do you have any evidence for the existence of an oral tradition in the 7th century in the Arabian Peninsula?
The Buddhism is the oldest.
So what? Oral tradition. Any evidence for the existence? Because you said you memorize because you are from an oral tradition.
We have Senate. It's called Senate.
You hear what?
For example, someone who memorized the entire
Senate,
Qur'an,
which is a proof, yeah.
you have the Senate of, I don't know what's
Chain
called
of
in
narration,
English.
he's saying.
A chain of narration.
Chain of narration. But listen
It
to
goes
my...
all the way back to the
It goes
Prophet.
all the way back to the Prophet.
Listen to me
For
carefully.
example, my grandmother, she memorized the Quran, alhamdulillah. She has a chain of narration that connects her all the way back to the Prophet.
Sure. But listen to my question again. I completely know and understand that Muslims claim that it was memorized right at the start in the 7th century,
Yeah.
which is what the gentleman also claimed. Claims I know exists. I'm asking for evidence. Have you got any evidence that in the 7th century, the Arabian Peninsula had an oral memorization tradition? Oral tradition generally for everything, and in one second, and in specific in relation to Islam, in relation to the Quran, an oral memorization tradition. Have you got any evidence?
Yes, I can tell you. I can't give you like a book that says it or something, but we know from Arabic traditions that even before Islam, oral traditions with poetry
was one of
and
the
other stuff like
main-
that could be used for Quran. It's actually way easier for them to memorize the Quran back then because they had oral traditions with poetry.
Listen to me, my dear friend. What's your name?
Abdul Muhsin.
Abdul Mercy. Please listen carefully. I completely hear what you're saying. It's popularly claimed.
Yes.
A claim is not an evidence. Have you got evidence?
Not yet, not now.
Let me tell you something very
Maybe
interesting.
by research, maybe.
Please, you need to research, because I am a Christian. I'd like all of you to be Christians, and I'll tell you why at the end of the conversation.
When we talk about the claim that the Qur'an was memorized from the 7th century, we have to approach it not only from the standpoint of faith, but also from the perspective of history. Pre-Islamic Arabia was an oral society. They preserved the legacy of Jahiliyyah poetry through memory, not through writing. Every year at the market of Ukaz, poets would compete in feats of memory. So it is clear that the ability to memorize long texts was an essential part of Arab culture. When Islam arrived, this pattern continued. Muhammad delivered the revelations orally, his companions memorized them, and a small portion was written down on palm stalks or pieces of leather. Culturally, that makes sense. But here an academic question arises. Is there any contemporary evidence that the Quran was memorized collectively from the very beginning? The answer is no. Islamic tradition does speak of the Hufaz, the memorizers of the Quran, going back to the time of Muhammad. But that is only an internal claim. From a historical perspective, an internal claim does not automatically become evidence. The earliest Quranic manuscripts we possess, such as the Birmingham Fragments or the Sana'a Palimpsest, date only from the late 7th or early 8th century. These are written witnesses, not proof of mass memorization. If we compare this with other traditions, the pattern is similar. The Torah was recited orally, but always supported by written texts. The teachings of Jesus were first spoken, but were committed to writing as the Gospels within just a few decades. In other words, oral tradition is real, but without documentary support, it cannot serve as conclusive evidence. This is why the claim that Muslims memorized the Quran from the very beginning remains simply a popular claim within the Islamic tradition. The real academic question is this: is there any external evidence outside the Islamic narrative that confirms it? So far, the answer is no. No non-Muslim source from the 7th century ever mentions the memorization of the Quran. What we do have are manuscripts, and manuscripts alone cannot prove that an entire community memorized the text from the start. The conclusion is clear. The oral culture of 7th century Arabia was indeed strong, and it made Quranic memorization culturally possible. But historical certainty about collective memorization can only rest on external evidence, and that evidence does not exist. This is the heart of the matter raised at Speaker's Corner. Claims can be made, but history demands real proof.
For now, I'll tell you this very importantly. You said, okay, calm down. Please keep distance. Thank you very much. No, this is Speaker's Corner. Please keep distance. Thank you very much. Now to you, sir. No, to you, sir. Can I tell you a few interesting points? You say there are other literature, Arabic literature, predating the Quran, which have been preserved orally and so on. Remarkably, there is no Arabic predating literature to the
So
Quran.
the Christians, do they have?
Quran is one of the first. The Arabic literature you're talking about, they're all from post-Islamic times, not pre-Islamic times. Post-Islamic times. With me so far. Number two, I'll now give you, you haven't given so far, which you said you'll try and find out. Find out, please look for evidence. Solid, unbiased evidence to help you youngsters understand that there was an oral tradition in the 7th century. Please look for it. I'll give you evidence for the fact that 7th century Arabia was not a place of oral tradition. 7th century Arabia was a place of written tradition. They wrote everything down.
Yeah,
I'll give you a number of, hey, wow, don't disturb please, thank you. I'll give you a number of points. I'll give you a number of points.
I'm talking.
I'll give you a number of evidential points. Yeah, number one. The Quran itself refers to kitabs. You're familiar with kitabs. What are kitabs? Written literature. Written. So the Quran refers to written literature. Yeah, it refers to written literature. In one particular surah, the Quran says when it comes to loaning money, if you need to loan money, I can show you if you want right now. If you want to loan money, it says find a scribe. Find a scribe who could write down details of the loan. Why? Because it belonged to a written environment, not oral environment. So evidence number one, the Quran referring to kitab. Evidence number two, the Quran itself actually saying find a scribe. I'll give you the reference in a brief moment. I'll give you third, very important, very important. You say Muhammad can neither read nor write. Yeah? You say Muhammad is special in that he can neither read. Yeah, one second. Yeah, Surah 2. Yeah, Surah 2 at the end. I'll come to that in a minute. Please, just 1 second. Point number 3. You say that that Muhammad, your messenger, can neither read nor write. Yeah, that's what you claim. Reading and writing, does that belong to an oral tradition or a writing tradition? What do you write? Reading, what do you read? Something which is orally said? What did Muhammad not know?
The Arabs used to write it.
What did Muhammad not know?
He didn't know how to read or write.
Read what?
I mean, you'd say text.
Read a written text. Your entire bogus tradition claims that he did not know how to read. Reading is from a written source. Here say he could speak. He could clearly speak to each other. Yeah, he could clearly speak to each other. Muhammad, according to your story, clearly could speak in Arabic. Speaking wasn't his area of disability. His area of disability was that he could neither read nor write, both of which pertains to a written tradition, not an oral tradition. If everyone else also did not write or read, is Muhammad special when he can't read and write?
Yes.
Listen to my question carefully. If in the entire environment, according to you, if across the Arabian Peninsula it was only an oral tradition, no one wrote, no one read.
No.
Excuse me, sir, please.
Excuse me, sir.
Lou is there.
They wrote.
You are disturbing too much.
know how to read.
Are you
They
with him,
know.
sir?
Yeah, they
Please
wrote.
stay away
Yeah.
from him.
They
He's a
know
little
how
bit confused.
They wrote.
If no one wrote, no one would have read. Would you agree?
In Islamic tradition, Muhammad is often called al-nabī al-ummī. Many take this to mean he could neither read nor write. From a theological standpoint, that becomes the argument. How could an illiterate man produce a book as complex as the Qur'an? But the classical commentators were not all in agreement. Some said ummi did not mean illiterate at all, but simply from a people without scripture. In that sense, the word is less about Muhammad's literacy and more about his mission to a nation with no written revelation. Now let's look at the history. 7th century Arabia was dominated by oral culture. Poetry, genealogies, and law were passed down by memory. At the market of ukaz, poets would compete by reciting long verses from memory. But this does not mean literacy was absent. Inscriptions, trade records, and even letters ascribed to Muhammad show that at least some people in Mecca and Medina could read and write. Arabia was not totally illiterate. It was oral in character, but with pockets of literacy. And this is where the challenge comes in. If everyone was illiterate, then Muhammad was not unique. His condition would have been the same as the people around him. If some could read and write, then the word ummi has to be re-examined. Was it really about him being unable to read, or was it more of a theological label? When it comes to the Qur'an, Islamic tradition highlights memorization, but it also admits pieces were written on palm stalks, bones, or leather. Modern scholarship confirms a dual track, oral recitation as the main channel, supported by writing. Early manuscripts like the Birmingham Fragments and the Sana Palimpsest prove that the text was being written down in the 7th century, though with variations. These manuscripts prove early writing, but not uniform mass memorization. And from a historical perspective, here lies the real problem: the absence of external evidence. 7th century non-Muslim sources do mention a prophet in Arabia, but none of them mention Quranic memorization, nor do they discuss Muhammad's literacy. That silence is important. It shows that these claims can only be found within the Islamic tradition itself, not outside of it. The conclusion is simple. Oral culture made Quranic memorization possible, but without external corroboration, it remains a matter of faith, not of verified history. Muhammad's status as ummi works as theology, not as historical proof. And that's why debates at Speaker's Corner matter. They expose the sharp difference between internal claims of faith and the standards of history, which demand real evidence.